So in this chapter of this of our Django series, what we're basically going to do is actually get something displayed on the screen for us, because this is what we're actually able to get to this point. This is our main aim. So the first we want to do is actually learn how to display maybe the author name, maybe display the title, and maybe display the content and that of the time that the content was actually being written. So the first thing we're going to do is actually to go to this of our app, because our site is actually working on this of the app. So we're going to go to this of the app, and then we're going to go to this of the views.py, because this views.py is where our views are going to see. So before that, we're going to look at some of the ways we can render our template on the screen. But before that, let me just come down here. Let me create a function. If you don't know really anything about function, I think you should check one of my videos where I talked about all these functions in well detail. Just think of function as a block of code where we can actually, or you can say function like we are a block of code. You can think of it like that, where you're going to write your code beneath this of the dead. Every time I write this there, you are going to write a function, and then you are going to give it name. So let's say I give it a name, and then when you come to that of Django, you are going to put what is actually called what request. I think I came to understand this request. It's more like your server response, or more like where with the help of this request, you can get information that's actually happening on your, I can say, on your server, on your web page, with the help of this request guy. Because we're going to make use of this request. When you want to get the username somebody entered, they can make use of this request their username or request or post. Just to with the help of this request, you can actually get a whole lot of information that's actually happening on your web page. So you can see with this request, then here we are going to write every other thing once. So say I put pass here for me to actually, for you not to be displaying error on my case. So let's say I want to display information like I stated. These are some of the information I want to display: the author name, the title, or maybe the title, the content, and the time that the content was actually posted. I know everything is going to be lived inside there. Basically, we're going to look at I can say two of the best way that content can be actually be rendered on our page. So the first is actually that of the HTTP response, and second one is that of this rendered at Django to provide for us in a default. So the first thing we're going to do is to make use of that of the HTTP response. And to actually do this, for this of the Django shortcut, we also have to import that of the, which is our HTTP response. So thanks for VS Code to helping me to complete some of this. So it is HTTP response. So we're going to see the two sides of these two guys. You can see the advantage and disadvantage of these two guys, and which one is best for you to use, and also the use case on each side, because most times we are going to make use of this render, and there's some station whereby we are going to make use of this HTTP response itself. So let's say in the situation where let's make use of this HTTP response first. To make use of this HTTP response is more like a kind of inline kind of information rendering. Let's think of it like, let's say I want to return a short information, because this HTTP response is mainly being used when you want to actually maybe render a small information. So I'm going to say our HTTP response. Can say short content. So anytime we go to our our server, we can say our website, and then with the information that we're expecting, when we run this of our home function that we have here, so the text we are going to get is this of the short content. So let's encode it in that of the h1, which is h1 type. You can also write your, you can say your, what is it called? Okay, let me just put this. Yes, second, what the VS Code let me to type some of all this. I say short content for blog page. This is HTML1 tag, which is a HTML syntax. So to do this, VS Code tend to help me to write for blog page. You can also write a content like this. So for us to actually run this of the this function that we have, no most times it's just basically simple function. We can just comment to write our home, and then are going to just run it. But in Django, it doesn't work like that. We're going to create what's actually called maybe a URL pattern. Once we have created this content that we have here, it's a test with HTML, with H1 tag on it. So this content that is going, you can see this is a text that is going to appear on our web page. So let me bring this guy down. So if I go to my web page, nothing is actually showing. So let me make sure the server is running. Python manage.py run. Let me try this my icon. So let me just clean up every. Okay. No, what did I do? Go back. I run this and manage.py. Okay, that thing to run it, which is a Python manage.py. I wonder where these guys came from. Okay, our server is currently running now. Let's reload it. You can see we're loading it, we're not getting any error. And there's another thing that happened here in our views.py. We're not getting the output that we were expecting, because we're expecting this text to actually appear on the screen. So for this to actually appear, you need to actually create a URL pattern that actually is going to help us to handle this. And then later we'll go to that pattern. Later we'll go to like at the beginning we're able to do something like /admin. When we do /admin, it's going to go to this admin. I say this admin, this is actually trying to run an admin URL pattern. Okay, let's go back to this admin. Is actually basically on this of our, which is our main project. You can see is somewhere here, this admin. This is actually admin.site URL. You can see this is, you can think of it like a function that's actually been created by Django that can actually provide us this admin kind of functionality that we can actually use to actually work with any maybe any models that have actually created, any maybe we want to edit or add something. So in our situation, we need to actually create this kind of pattern, URL pattern, but there's basically many ways. We can actually come here to create the pattern itself, but the better way is actually to create a separate Python file inside of this of our app that we can name it URLs, and then we are going to create it. We are going to create a separate URL file that we're going to, all our URL is going to live on in this of our folder, and we're going to actually just include it. But let's just see a basically simple way to do this. If we're actually creating a basic website, so what we can do here just to copy this guy, paste it. In our case, we'll actually name it home. So actually name it home. We can actually say something like, we got enter, we'll go to /home, which function do we want to run. So we want to run, but before we can do that, we need to actually import our view. So this work is that when you go to this of our local host, okay, where is our server now running? When you go to our local host /home, like how we did for that of /admin, what do you want to happen? I want to run this of our function, which is this entire function. When we run this our function, we want to actually render this content on the screen. So how do we do this? Like I said, there are better ways to actually for this of our URL match, there are better ways to do this, but let me just show you the simplest way we can actually do this. So we need to actually import our views before we can actually make use of this. So we can, from this of our, because these views live inside of this of our app, which is this blog page. So we can call our blog or underscore what page. We want to import our what views. Simple as that. So what enter we go to /home. What do we want to run? We want that of the views dot what home. Where did this view dot home come from? This view dot home, this home signifies the name of the function, and this views signify the file. So then we go to /home, we're going to run these views dot home. So let's go back. Our server is now running. Is that running? What could be the problem? So let's go down here, type and Python manage the py run server like how we always do. So let's wait for server to kick up. Okay, our server is up and running now. So let's go back. Let's reload this page. Okay, now we'll get this kind of error that page not found. Why do we get this type of error? Because now in this scenario that we have here, there's no any can see request method get request URL. When we on a default, this is where we are trying to access, and there's no any URL pattern that actually matches this. Since we've actually changed it to enter, we'll go to /what home. Remember that our /home was actually what we set here /home. What do we want to do? We want to run is views.home. It still getting confusing as we go on. You are still going to understand it really more. So let's rerun this page. This is going to be /home. hit enter. I can see the short content for blog page, which is actually what we set to this of our. When we go to the enter run this function and what is short content for this our blog page. Let's just put it updated. Let's see that take effect. Let's go back to our website and load this. Why is not loading proper? Okay, let's run it again. You can see short content for blog page updated. And see later we'll go to this /home. Later we'll go to this /home. This content is going to be rendered for us. So this is one of the easiest way to actually create our URL pattern, because what we actually did was actually to create a URL pattern. Enter will go to a particular URL pattern, want to actually run a particular function. This is just basically what we actually did here. As you can see that just go to this of your GFG Django project on the URL, going to write your URL. But this way, this is one of the best, this is one of the simplest way to do this for a smaller project. But if your project is becoming is a huge project and that has many, maybe want to do multiple, we have multiple apps on that of the project. You can see that maybe in a particular project, for example, you have that in a particular app, we have /home that appear multiple times, or maybe the URL, maybe you have 3 apps. For example, you can see that when I come here to be writing a URL pattern, it's going to be huge. I think almost 100 lines of code here, which is going to mess with our URL, the main URL up. So this the best thing to actually do here is actually to list your apps, all your URL should be inside of your particular apps. This is one of the best way to do this. Let it be inside of the particular apps, and then you can actually just include it, because for it to work, it must actually be related to, must actually be in all ways must be related to or be mapped into this of the main URL. Because this main URL.py is like the main guy that's actually going to let it work. Even though you write inside this of your apps, you didn't refer to this of the URLs, it's not going to work. So let me just show you an example of what I mean. So this is what the blog page. Django automatically defaultly doesn't provide us with that of the file. So you need to actually create it by yourself. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it our URLs. There's no must name it URLs. You can set a name, give it a name of your choice, but it actually makes sense if you give it any. If you give it URL. So the first thing we need to adjust contains, so we need to enter the copy anything. So we can see from dot we want to import our what views. So I'm going to explain what this actually is. From this dot, instead of me say from the blog page we want to import views, since we're in the same folder, I can say same directory. I don't need to actually specify the name of the directory any longer. So this dot signify the current directory that I am on. So in this directory, I'm going to do this thing that I just copy this. Let me just paste it back here. And I don't need this. So I'm going to actually import this part in the Django already has already. Just paste it. With this is actually similar thing that we did here. So we can get rid of this, also get rid of this. So I think everything is looking great now. Now app, all the URL is going to be mapped inside of this of our app is here. So in the social web we created multiple apps, it doesn't get messed up. So it's also a good idea whenever you create a pattern. It's also a good idea. URL pattern is also a good idea if you give it a name, because sometimes maybe you can decide to give this home1, but if the name is still enter, if you give it a name, it's not going to. You can make use of the name to actually refer to that of URL, even though URL pattern is changed. Once the name is made constantly, it's just still going to run. So let me just change this back to home and give it a name for just remember. So we can give it a name. Which name do you want to give it? You can give it maybe home, maybe home page. Yeah, I think this works well. So let's go back to our website and then run this page not found. Why do we get this page not found? Which is HTTP 127 local port 8000 home not found. Why do we get this? Because right now, because Django doesn't recognize this file that I wrote inside it. For you to actually map it so Django can actually recognize, you need to actually move into this the main project guide inside of this URL, which is this URL. So to this, we are going to make use of what is actually called include. We are going to include this folder we have actually, so this URL, or can say the entire folder. We need to actually include it in this of the can say the project itself, the project URL. So to do this, we are going to this of the Django URL. Also want to add words or actually called what include. So therefore this include function, we can actually just include this URL file that we inside there. So as if we are going to put this URL file into this main URL file. So to do this, we are going to say what? I'm going to put that of the path and just copy this. It's going to be similar. Paste this here. It's going to, we're not going to put anything here. So what do we want to do? We want to actually include this include our imported. So what do we want to include? We want to actually include that of the our blog underscore what page dot what URLs. Hope that is not confusing. We want to this blog dot this blog page. This is the folder dot what URL. This URL is this URL guide that we just created. Now we're actually telling Django that just without going to any this and this leaving it empty here. Want to include this of our files that we create. Let's say in a situation whereby it was actually something and maybe he gave you something like maybe URL 222. Here I'm going to put this URL 222 and they're going to be URL 222. So be mindful of the name you give it, but just give it a reasonable name. So I think that is it. So if we go to this of the slash home again, let's see what we get. Therefore, I'm going to get an error. Why am I getting this? Okay, see reloading. Let's run it again. You can see the short content for page, blog page updated. You can see that now we're able to include it. This URL that I've written now we're able to include. So each app we will create is going to have its own URL, all its URL being mapped out to it. So I don't think we're not going to touch these guys and we're not going to come here again, or maybe we want to create our media file. That's why we're going to come here. But let's just close this. Well, so let's look at what we actually do here once more back again. So this is the function that we created, and this is the enter. We'll call this function because in Python, enter and create a function. We need to actually call this a function. Enter will call this function. This text is going to be rendered out. This short content for blog page. So this content is going to render out, and for you to call a function, you need to go to a particular URL. When you go to this particular URL slash home, and then it's going to run out of the function views.home. And this views.home, Python doesn't recognize. We created it by ourselves because since this is going to be a huge project, so it's always a good idea if you create the file separately and then you are going to include it in the main we can say URL pattern that Django recognizes. So this is what we included it here. So for Django to actually recognize it. So consider this is one of the short way to actually write our HTML content, because Django actually works for that of the backend, nothing concerns it with the front end. So the front end is that of the HTML we are going to use to structure it, CSS to start it or make it, also adding that of the bootstrap, maybe HTML also to actually make it a little bit actually add some fonts in on it. So you can see that this with this help of HTTP response class in this of the Django, you can also render your HTML content in maybe inline or maybe in short way. But with the help of this render, we're going to have a use example of render, how we can actually make use of render to actually render content on this. We have seen how to make use of this of the HTTP response. So next we are going to make use of this render, and then we can actually compare and contrast which one is best for you. Remember that it's not must make use of render, it's not must make use of response. It all depends on what you want to do. So how to make use of render is basically, so the way that render works, it works in this way. Render tends to render a full template on this website or the web page. So let's see how the render works. So let's say in the institution we have maybe maybe API call, maybe we got a content, maybe the contents, these are the content, maybe we'll have the author that maybe the person that posted the content. Let's say the name is actually, let's give it Peter, and then we'll have the content itself and say content, you can call it Peter's content can say Peter content one, and just take this, and then the next we'll have the, maybe let's give it title first. You can say title. You can say Peter's title. Okay, let me just move this one on it. So next one we'll have, let's say we'll have something like the date added. Let's say the date underscore, let's give it posted. Okay, let's say the day that content was posted was January, let's say January 25th, let's say 2025 for example. You can see the author, which was Peter's title, and then the content, Peter's content, and the date the content was actually posted. Let's say there's basically other people that actually posted, not just Peter. Okay, then let's see, let me post some more. Just let me just give it to Lily. These are just dummy data that I want to actually use to explain how render actually was. Let's say this is John. Let me just copy this, this, and then let's say it was actually February. So there won't be the same thing. And this is maths. I say maths. Yeah, I think this is maths. And then this is, let's say December maybe 29. So I just made it, gave all these dumb data so you can tend to understand what we actually do. Remember that this is type. Let me zoom this a little bit back. Remember this is list. Remember that we can actually look through all this content. So the way that render tend to take a full template and then render it on that of the server that we have. So to do this, the first thing we are going to do is actually to create a template. When we create a template, we are going to move information over to it, because when we did for this of the, we make use of this of the HTTP response here, I will give it information directly, but in render it doesn't work like that. It actually move information from your views to that, or from your database, or from your API calls over to your template, and then you can render it there. So to create a HTML file, you won't just come here and start, maybe you put something like home.html. Okay, HTML. Python is not going to recognize it just by you doing that. So the way it works is actually to create a folder, which you have to call it template. Remember, be mindful of the name, because if it's not the name, I don't think Django is going to respond to that. So inside of this folder, you need to actually create another folder, which is going to be the name of your app. This was our blog underscore what page. Inside this of the blog page, now here is where you're going to create your HTML files. So you're going to create, maybe the first one is home.html, and be mindful of the extension and writing. So if I write HTML5, VS is going to help me to complete it. So I can give it the title, can give it home page. You know that the title is going to be what is going to appear. Like I see Easy Kids Web Development tutorial. So give it home page. So side of here, I need to actually render all those information. This information that is here, the information that is there, I want to actually move it over to our home.html. So we are going to make use of this of the render. Let me just select this guy out. So since I've selected this HTTP response, so we need to actually make use of this of the render. Remember I said that render tends to render a full template on the screen, on the HTML page. So there's basically one of the other things you can do is actually the information that you want to actually pass to our HTML file. You can just set it to that of the context. So it's going to be a dictionary. Here is going to, let me just call it post. So the information I want to send is this of the post, which is this post that I wrote here. I want to move it over to that of the HTML file. and then I gave it a context. So this is the name I gave it, which is post. So we're going to make use of render. So to do this, we're going to say our to return the what render. So what do we want to render? We want to render our this of our home.html. So we are going to, the first argument you take is this of the request, which is this request, and then followed by the template you want to actually render. So in our case is this home.html. So with the way Django actually want us to do this, actually to specify the name of the app first. So we're going to say our blog underscore what page slash what home the what HTML. This is how Django expects us to do this. So the information I want to actually move over is to that of the what context. You can specify context equals to context, or you can just leave it. So this way, I've actually rendered this of our home.html, which is this file. I've actually rendered it to all the information here. We actually also included it and moved it over to home.html. So let's actually go to our server and run it and see we get this title home page like how we specified here. You can see that our HTML file has been rendered. The main advantage of this of the render is that it make your work neater. It doesn't mean that you can't write everything inside of this of HTTP response. But I don't think it actually makes sense in any way you can think of. It doesn't even make sense to write inside of this of HTTP response, because when someone is going through your script, it's always a good idea if your script is actually neat, not kind of. But HTTP response is actually the best for short information you want to render on this. Maybe a warning, maybe something else that is short that doesn't that's not really big enough like that. That's when I say HTTP response is the best case on that. So what are this content that we have here with our interest is actually to render it on the screen on our HTML file, and to actually to do this is basically to render this our information here to our HTML file is basically simple. Since we have actually passed it into our this of our render guide that we have here, which is this context, which is this guy here, and gave it a name post, which is post was actually the variable name we gave this of the entire context. So since we have actually passed, we can actually loop through it, because when we look at it, this is actually a list sign, so we can actually loop through it. So, and also to loop when it comes to that of Django is not like how you just come and say for s in something. You have to come with this bracket, this dictionary bracket, and with a percentage sign, two in front, one in front and one at the back. So you can then say for x in maybe in post. Remember that this post guy was the name we give our this post was the name of the guy we give this our post. So the name was match. So instead of saying X, it is a good idea if you say something useful like post, and then every time you are done with, make sure you to put your and for can I say is going to be and for make sure to always put it, because if you don't put it, Django is not going to be happy with you. So the first thing we want to actually render is that of the maybe the author, then the like how we expected in this of our page, the author, then the title, the content, and the date that the content was added. So we can put our all the author is going to be maybe h2 tag, so we can put our h2 tag. So we're going to say our post the words the author, and then the for our h1 tag we can put it for maybe something like title. Let me just say h1 tag, so we can say post the word title. Hope that isn't hard. And then for our maybe for our content, maybe you can put it, maybe you can give it any other. I just want to make use of h1 tags, each tag, so we won't get everything confusing. So the next one to maybe want to maybe for our content, let's give it h3 tag, so we can say our post the word content content. Remember, all this name, author, title, content must actually match the information you're actually sending, which is this author, title, content. You can start to put title first, but the name, the dictionary name, or the key, because this is basically how information are being stored in that database. This is more like a dictionary or more like API calls. This is more like how information is going to be stored. So anytime you're calling, make sure the name matches. So in our case was this content. So let's actually ask for the date are there. So in our case, we might decide to put something like h4 tag, can put the what post dot what date that content was actually being posted. Like with this, I've actually moved all the information here over to our home.html file. So let's actually reload this our page. You can see post the author, post the title, post the content, which is not what we is not what we expected to get. So what did we do wrong here? Post for posting post. So the mistake I can find the okay. Since we are trying to actually get those of the content, it is post the author want to actually get John, maybe Matt and that of the Peter. Them Django, it make use of these two dictionary query braces, which is going to be 2 here for each of them. So it's going to be 2. This is how Django want us to do this. Most of this syntax is more like that of Jinjutsu syntax. So let's just actually go back, reload our page, and see Peter's title, Peter content, and the date, which was January 21st, and we have the John title, and then John content, date. You can see that we have actually our server is now our content. I can say our page is now looking like what we were expecting. We expected to have. You can see the author, the title, the content, and that of the date. And you can see, even though I've not actually beautified, but this is just how HTML structure is being structured, and then the beautification is going to be handled by that of the Bootstrap and for that of the CSS. You can see we have actually look at the difference between that of the render and that of the HTTP response. So with this, we can actually conclude that HTTP response are being used in a situation whereby content are small, the content you want to post are small, and the render is basically mainly be used when you want to actually render a full template. And then most times render is the best, and then it's actually the most advanced one to it, because Django automatically provides it for you. Because I think Django know that HTTP response is not actually being used in modern website these days, because you can use it. Modern website contain even more script than this. So in the situation where you want to actually view your source code, you can actually right click and view VP source code, or anything you can call it. Let's just wait for it to actually load complete. You can see this is HTML and English. Is actually want to actually good, nothing really much. So if you're interested in being a page source, just right click and then go to page source. Actually inspect. This is actually mainly because when you're doing web scraping and other things that comes with it. So this can see how simple this was actually for us to achieve.